Hello, this is Gabe Larson with InsideSales.com. Excited to be here. Today we're going to be talking about the 5 secrets to closing 7-figure deals. But before we jump into the meat of the presentation, wanted to play a quick video on forecasting while we let a few others trickle in. I'm going to go ahead and play it now.
Do you know what's changing in your pipeline week over week? Are you struggling to know which deals will close as you try to make your quota and forecast number? HD Forecast from Inside Sales allows you to zero in on what's changed in your pipeline, spot risk, and deliver bulletproof forecasts. It reduces the time you spend forecasting so you can spend more time making sales. HD Forecast, part of the InsideSales.com platform, drives more revenue by increasing your time to sell, doubling your forecast accuracy, and improving close rates by up to 20%. See how HD Forecast can help you mitigate your pipeline risk to sell more and improve your forecast accuracy.
All right, fantastic. So let's get on in. Before we jump in, I do want to make sure everyone has a couple house cleaning items in their back pocket. So number one, there is a chat box that I'd love to use a couple times. It's going to be probably on your right-hand side. If you can, real quick, just type your name and where you're from so that I can make sure everyone's got that kind of on their radar. Perfect. There you go. We've got Tom, Mary, Frank. Good. Also, we'll have a Q&A session at the end here. So if you do have questions, you can go ahead and pop that in now throughout the presentation, or you can also do that at the end. I've got this slide in front of you. We have launched a Sales Acceleration podcast. I'll be leading that. Would love to have you subscribe on iTunes or listen to it. I think we're going to be sharing continually some great information week over week about the best of the best in the sales acceleration space. Yeah, it looks like we got Mike from Dell, Robert, Insight Software, Inside View. Awesome, guys. I'm ready to rock and roll. So let's go ahead and jump into the presentation. Again, we're talking about 5 secrets to really close big deals. Now, to start out, I wanted to start with a more data-driven approach here. So what you're seeing is the Business Growth Index. This is a study we've commissioned over the last year where we've actually analyzed over 5 million sales interactions. Most of those are sales pipeline interactions. We've also interviewed over 500 leaders to see if we can't figure out what's going on in the industry, what's going on in the market, and there's some really interesting stuff that's come out of it. One is 76% of business leaders predict either steady or accelerated growth. So good news for all of us. A lot of the people who are leading large organizations are thinking that the future is bright. Now, if you don't think that's as interesting, you're definitely going to think this one is. I'm actually going to throw out a poll question that we threw out in the actual BGI study, and that is, if you're a sales leader, you're a sales manager, who is the most difficult executive to deal with when you miss your number? CRO, CMO, CFO, CEO. Go ahead and type in or choose your option and let's see the results. You may or may not be surprised about some of the results here, but I'm going to give you 30 seconds. Again, who is the most difficult executive to deal with when you miss your number? Looks like we've got a handful of people. Perfect. So results on that. Yeah, look at that. So as you can see, CRO, CFO, CEO actually ended up beating it out, the CFO. True to the study, you guys, about 58, almost 60% of respondents said the CFO. The CEO was actually right around 14%. So within the study, a lot of interesting information, both qualitatively and quantitatively, to really get where we want to be within this study. Now, probably the thing that's most relevant to today's topic and where I want to dive into is really around closing these large deals. Now, I want to pause just a minute and say, as you look at the bottom of the pipeline, that's usually where you're going to be maintaining a lot of your CRM data. And I've got to thank Microsoft, who's our primary sponsor today, as well as Armanino. Big partnership that we've announced recently with Microsoft, and are excited to be working with them and excited to dive into these topics that really focus on how we close bigger deals. So as we look at the BGI data, 3 key things came out: sales cycle, close rate, and deal size. Look at that. In general, companies are going whale hunting. They are trying to move upstream. Deal sizes on average from 2014 to 2015, 5.5% higher. Close rates dip a little bit and sales cycles get a little bit longer. And we're seeing that people are wanting to move upstream. The question is, how are they doing that effectively? And as we ran through this data, looked into the haystack, and asked these business leaders what they're doing differently, we wanted to share that today to see if we can't then get you that information so you can do the same. So let's look at secret number 1. And this one is thinking about an account-based sales model. And my goodness, you guys, this has been on my mind a ton lately. There's just a lot of buzz in the market around account-based marketing, account-based sales, account-based everything. So I want to push another poll question out to you just to kind of see from the few hundred people we've got here, what type of sales model are you executing on right now? Are you more of an account-based sales model, or are you more of a high-velocity sales model? Go ahead and just take a second and fill that out. Good. Yes, some of you are putting that in the chat box, but feel free to put that. Actually, you can put it on the screen and answer that. It looks like I'm going to go ahead and actually, we probably should have put an option to do both. So it looks like the majority, wow, 80% of the audience is executing on an account-based model rather than a high-velocity model. Now, some of you in the question chat box are saying, Gabe, what is an account model versus a high-velocity model? Usually I say an account model, you guys, has one of these 4 characteristics. One is just deal size. Good friend of mine, Trish Bertuzzi, over at the Bridge Group said, hey, if you are running a strategic sales motion and your average deal size is over $50K, you're probably looking to be in that account-based model. Sales cycle, typically more in the 180 days, a little bit longer sales cycle if you're running an account-based model. You're typically targeting higher segments, or number 4, you're just in a place where your customers are demanding a more personalized touch. So those are some of the characteristics of an account-based model. Now, if you've been around and you've heard the buzz, this is a little bit of an Engagio model here. What is account-based sales, and how can you start executing on it? So I've got my own definition here of account-based sales that I want to throw out to you and see, kind of get your general perspective. As the name implies, account-based sales, in my opinion, is a unified strategy to generate revenue by focusing on a personalized interactions across optimal personas in targeted accounts. Oftentimes I like to just say, hey, account-based sales is personalized sales. If you want to move upstream, you've got to be thinking about how you can start to execute an account-based strategy. You'll hear sometimes talking about it and say, hey, an account-based everything. The reason you're seeing the slide in front of you now is, look, you can't run account-based sales alone. If you think you're running account-based sales, you're probably in one of the evolutionary steps if you just have marketing or you just have your sales development team doing it. A true account-based model has the whole team working together. So you've got account-based marketing concepts. You've got account-based sales development concepts. You have account-based closing, and everyone is working together in a unified strategy to see if they really can't personalize and pinpoint optimal contacts in targeted accounts to drive more sales. If you're going after big whales, this type of motion is going to be extremely effective. If you'd like to hear more about kind of an optimal account-based sales strategy, feel free to ping me. I've got a lot of opinions on that, or grab me on LinkedIn. Looks like we've got a few people we've got about 10 questions on this. Let me just dive into a couple of the Q&As. So it looks like, Jenna, you've mentioned, can you say that definition one more time? Let me throw that out again. Account-based sales, a unified strategy to generate revenue by focusing on personalized interactions across optimal personas in targeted accounts. And if I break that down briefly, a unified strategy, as I mentioned, it can't be a sales development, it can't be isolated. It's got to be an attack plan that is created as a group and executed as a group. Now, to generate revenue, that's part of the definition. Obviously, the goal of sales is to generate revenue by focusing on personalized interactions. The focus is personalization, not automation. Every action that needs to be taken, you've got to think, how would this particular persona react to the action? How would I feel if I were in their shoes? How would my CMO respond to this activity? If you want to stand out, and the best way to do this, you've got to individualize each and every action performed. Now, these last 2 points across optimal personas. Now, remember, a persona is a representation of your ideal customer. It's important to know which personas play a role in purchasing your product or service because they have different needs. They got different pain points and goals. Now, by tailoring your approach to each persona, you can definitely move the needle on your sales numbers. And then the last point in that definition, Jenna, is that targeted accounts. Now, when I say targeted accounts, I don't mean subjectively chosen by account executive. This is a strategic, data-driven concept that is agreed upon by a group because of the propensity to buy is high and they fit the ideal customer profile. A lot of talk about this, but I think you can get pretty tactical on operationalizing an account-based sales model by thinking of that concept around personalization, personas, targeted accounts. So that's one way. As we interviewed leaders, that we really started to feel this is why people are moving upstream, because of this whole account-based movement. Now, let's jump to point number 2 here, and that is around technology. I'm going to go ahead and ask this question first. Again, we've got Microsoft and Armanino is our main sponsors today, and CRM is a key component of any technology stack. So I'm interested about CRM stickiness. Tell me if you've adopted a CRM in the last 6 months, if you're planning to switch a CRM in the next 6 months, how hard it is to change, but man, I would like to, or I love my CRM. Interested to know CRM stickiness as we look about our potential partnership with Microsoft and some of the fantastic things we're doing in that realm. While you guys answer that, I'm going to just kind of continue looking at the Q&A here. Yeah, Mike, I'm seeing from Dell, I play the account-based closing role in the account-based sales team group. Again, if you want to really tighten this, you've got to be able to figure out how that closing role can work with that sales development and marketing. You can't go at it alone. So let's look at these poll results. Wow, 34% has adopted a new CRM in the last 6 months. 36 saying, I love my CRM. Planning to switch. Actually, it seems really difficult to switch CRMs, but we've almost got 20%, almost 1 in 5 people saying, hey, we're looking around to potentially make a change. I mean, the CRM is the fundamental piece in an optimal tech stack. And I want to get into a couple other concepts here. So when I look at an optimal tech stack, you guys, I try to break it in to these 5 key personas. This helps me just categorize it so that I don't get overwhelmed in what we need and don't need. So you've got your sales development, you got your account executive, you've got your client success, you've got sales management and sales operations. Certainly there's slightly other functions, but I think most personas can fit into these 5 categories. Now, what I've done then is I've gone ahead and said, what are the optimal concepts, or what are the optimal technology pieces that fit into each persona? This is a great way to start thinking about how to optimize your tech stack. Now, what we did is we went out to the market in our BGI study, and again, we went ahead and looked at and asked leaders and said, as you close bigger deals, what is the technology that's helping you do that? And here's the data that came back from that. So you can see there's about 15 different tool sets, all in the sales acceleration space, that companies said, hey, these are, if I'm closing big deals, these are the ones that I've got to have. And I'm going to just highlight the kind of the top ones. I was a little bit surprised on some of these. Notice CRM is dominant. That's why I started that around the conversation around, CRM and Microsoft and Armanino. Number 2 on that list, just by a little bit, is sales intelligence. And this is becoming key. You can't be a sales rep who has to scour all these different data sources to figure out news alerts and job changes and company information and revenue and personnel. We're seeing more sales intelligence being given to the sales rep, and this is becoming increasingly important. Why? Because of account-based sales, personalization. I got to know who I'm going after so that I can hit their hot buttons. Then you move into that sales presentations. That wasn't too surprising. A lot of cool stuff going on around there, not just presenting, but screen sharing, getting more predictive in that realm. And then you move into that, the data and list services. It's always about the leads. How do I find better leads? So when we asked, these are the top 4 that we asked over 500 business leaders, what are your go-tos? You got to have to close big deals. These were the top 4 mentioned. Now, the thing that was interesting when you dove in, and I did some of these interviews, you guys, the concept around predictive was pretty interesting. But before I dive into that, I want to kind of get your opinion on optimal tech stacks. What is your go-to tools? If you're trying to close these bigger deals, what's the technology you have to have? What's the one that you go to and say, I can't live without it, it's so sticky? Do you mimic the study? Do you feel like you go slightly different? So go ahead and answer that. I'm going to jump back. I'm getting behind on my Q&A here, but I love that. Justin, do you see a lack of CRM stickiness as an attribution to not hitting numbers or a salesperson's excuse? I'm a little more old school. I think you can close deals. If you're good, you can close them almost no matter what. You got to find a way to do it. The thing I think we're seeing around CRM stickiness is not necessarily an attribution of hitting numbers. I think it's because we're moving into an age where CRM has got to enable and not disable. It can't be just a data input tool. It's got to give me more. And so people are craving and looking for opportunities to say, hey, when I log into my CRM, I'm the CEO of my territory as a sales rep. I want this to do something for me. I don't want it just to be something I have to do. That, I think, is why you're seeing some of the CRM stickiness. Now, let's go back to that poll question. Where is she? Right there. Results are CRM ended up with only 13% sales intelligence. So you did go with the concept there. That looks like the predominant one. Sales presentations. Other got a few. So a little bit spread out here. A little bit of mimicking the study. Sales intelligence. Looks like communications kind of hit off the top 5 there. I'm not too surprised that the structured communication model, thinking about a good cadence, making sure you follow up appropriately, that's becoming more and more of a big player in the space. So it sounds like we're pretty close to some of those results. As I mentioned, this was a question that I was really pushing in some of my interviews with the team. I wanted to know what's the future and where does Predictive is a big conversation. It's a big buzzword. Is there any juice behind it? And almost 20% of leaders said, again, this is not necessarily just a predictive technology, but the conversation of using data around some of these tool sets to be smarter, not just work harder, but smarter. Leaders, almost 20% of them said predictive concepts are giving them a boost in driving larger deals. So I think there's something about the predictive world that you're going to continue to see as we think about, if we're targeting big deals, we need to know who to target and how to target them and the prescriptive model to target them after. Okay, let's move into number 3 here. So those are a little more things you may do externally. I want to focus on a couple more internal principles about cleaning up your own house and following through the right way. So to start, we've got to get better about managing our pipeline. So I am pretty interested in this. I'm going to push it out to the audience. When we think about pipeline management and forecasting best practices, where are you? Where are you in your journey? You've kind of got a top-to-bottom approach here. You just have informal or verbal stages, or you've got some stuff built into CRM, you're playing around a little bit with Excel, or do you have a kind of a real-time predictive forecasting model that really helps you know where to go, who to go after, and your likelihood to have them close or do or engage in business with you? While you answer that, I'm going to try to hit a couple more of these Q&As. Let's see. Seems everyone. So, good question here about which CRMs are, most optimal to play a role in. Certainly Salesforce is a great one. Microsoft Dynamics is a great CRM, depending on where you are in the market and what your needs are, whether you're small, medium, or large. That's going to have to be a decision you're going to have to dive into. But I think there's a lot of different options out there and some really good players. Let's look at the actual question here. Where are you on pipeline management and forecasting? So let's see. It looks like the majority are. You've got a little bit of a mix there. Most people are what I'd call kind of a level 2. So, they've got some sort of process that's built into CRM, but they've not gotten too far down the path of maybe some real visualization, a handful of people playing in that predictive realm. Look at this. Governance structure for forecast and pipeline management, not something that hits the radar. So let's talk about establishing a good foundation. Again, if you're going to close deals, it can't be accidental. You've got to do it in a structured, formal way, and I want to walk you through a couple concepts here. So here's 3 key concepts of establishing a strong foundation around pipeline management and forecasting. On the left-hand side there, you've got stages, you've got categories, and then you've got probability. And I want to just go through a couple of these briefly. So the stages, probably pretty self-explanatory, indicates where your opportunity is in the sales cycle. A couple key things you want to consider when developing your sales stage. Number 1 is, are you a transactional model or are you a relational model? So that's that concept of high velocity versus account-based. You're going to make your sales stages quite a bit different depending on where you are in each of those. You want to define stages, milestones, and outcomes. And I've actually put a sample for you here. You can find this on our website, InsideSales.com, under our resources. I know it's a little bit small, but what you'll basically see in this is I have my sales stages defined on top, but then I've also got my milestones and my outcomes. These are things that I need to achieve in order to move from one stage to another. And before I do, I actually need to check the box on each of these outcomes. It gets to a more objective strategy and structure, and I would strongly suggest that you take the time to really get that so that you can more accurately figure out where people are on your pipeline and how you can move them forward. So that's a little bit on sales stages. The next one is categories. Now, categories, these are going to indicate how an opportunity will be reflected in the pipeline. Oftentimes, sometimes the default category is assigned based on the stage, but it can be overridden by the rep. This is going to play a big role in the way you forecast, and there's a lot of pros and cons to each of these, but I think this is a good foundation to kind of get set in there. So pipeline, upside, commit, and one, these are going to be subjective concepts typically that reps can then override to say where a deal is or is not in your pipeline. On the probability side of things, this is going to indicate a likelihood the opportunity will close based on a completed activity. So this one is going to be automatically assigned based on stage. So couple key concepts here again. Definitely want to make sure your stages cover the entire funnel. You want them to be unique. I don't want to be able to put a person who's in a particular bucket maybe in 2 buckets. And then especially on that probability, got to see if you can get a little data behind there. I've just put in a subjective 0, 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. You got to see if you can't figure out your stages and map those to some sort of probability, because it's going to play a large role in what I want to talk about next, which is using this structure to see if we can't get to a place where we now have some real meat and can watch these deals in a more strategic manner. So with that in place, with kind of that foundation in place, I'm a believer that you should be watching 4 key concepts to make sure you have your eye on the prize around these bigger deals. And I call it quantity, quality, velocity, and balance. This is the checklist to measure the health of your pipeline. Quantity is the total quantity of your pipeline versus your quota. Does it meet the expected pipeline quota ratio? Do I have enough in there? Quality. What are some quality things? What percentage of your pipeline has a scheduled next event? How long has stuff decayed? When has it been touched last? Are we working opportunities that will close? Now, this is where some of this predictive technology comes into play. Are you working the stuff that has the highest likelihood to close? What should be your next step? A lot of people throwing opportunities in there. My sales manager says, hey, Gabe, you need to have $2 million in your pipeline. So I just throw stuff in there, and that kind of lack of focus really starts to hurt me in the long run. So I'm a big believer in quality. Velocity, some of the things around velocity. Are opportunities moving through the pipeline stages at a reasonable rate? What's going to be the ratio from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4? And then lastly is going to be balance. Is there an even distribution of prospects in each stage? Too often in sales, we clean out the whole entire pipe at the end of the month or end of quarter, and then we don't have anything to start. How am I managing to keep my top kind of funnel stuff working, but also then getting stuff and cleaning it out at the bottom of your funnel? So I think these are solid strategies to keep check, kind of a good health check on your pipeline. Again, I'd love to dive into this. If you have other questions, throw them in the chat box, and would be happy offline on LinkedIn or on Twitter to dive into this more with you. But I'm going to kind of continue on here to point number 4. So this is an interesting one. Having a structured cadence, a management cadence. Again, I think if you're going after these big deals, we've got to do it in a more strategic manner, and I think it starts in your own house. You got to clean your own house before you go outside of it. So this is what I feel like is a strong sales management cadence, and I'm going to just walk you through kind of the high level here. So I've got annual, semi-annual, quarterly, monthly, and then weekly or biweekly. This is going to allow you stick with some sort of plan like this. This is going to allow you to get into those strategic realms. Annually, we get our business or territory planning nailed down. Semi-annually, we make sure we hit some sort of performance or competency assessments. Quarterly, we're doing those account reviews. That's a big piece of that account-based model. Got to get your sales rep to do those strategic quarterly plans, targeted accounts, in and out. I typically like to change my target accounts in and out every quarter, but that gives you a strategic, tactical opportunity to do that. Monthly, you hold some sort of sales meeting, and then weekly or biweekly, we get tactically into that coaching, pipeline management, our commits, our expect, the quantity, quality, balance, velocity, how are my opportunities progressing, and those more just day-to-day account strategies. You're looking at this as a big picture. You won't be so reactive, you'll be more proactive. So one of the key components of this is some sort of a forecast cadence, and I noticed that most of the group didn't choose this in the question, that they do have some sort of forecast cadence. This would be a sample, but I'm a believer you need to be thinking about a strategic forecast cadence, or you're just not going to stay on top of some of these deals. So I thought I'd actually throw out a sample here and then talk about just a couple concepts there on the right. So food for thought, right? Let's say weekly, Thursday morning, reps sit down, manage their ops, and start to apply the forecast standards. I like using technology to do this, but obviously it starts with the reps. In the afternoon, the manager is going to review that pipeline, update, revise, potentially develop. Friday morning, the sales VP is going to do his manager forecast meeting where he kind of gets his call together. And then let's say, Friday afternoon, CEO is going to do the official forecast call meeting where we roll it up through the whole organization. Getting some sort of cadence down like this is going to help you stay away from some of those forecast concepts like, sandbagging and saving face and getting happy ears, because you've got a structured cadence to monitor it and stay on top of some of these bigger deals. Now, let's go ahead and jump to point, I think we're getting to the end here, point number 5. And that is around coaching. We all know about coaching, but I just feel like, especially in a more strategic model, coaching is often kind of dropped, or it's just not happening as much as I think it should be. So this is one of those kind of typical pictures that we see. We bring in a sales methodology. I'm a big proponent of Sandler and Spin, and gone through a lot of these trainings, love a lot of the models, but sometimes we end up just doing a couple days and we see this decay happen, right, where post-training our sales improvement drops. Coaching is the key component on training. That's what can happen when a manager takes the time to take some of those concepts that the foundation was established and put a structure and strategy in place to make sure that we continue to increase our sales performance. Now, I'm amazed at this sometimes, you guys. I got to admit, I get it. You're an enterprise salesperson. You've been doing it for 20 or 30 years. You're the king. You're the queen. You don't need any help. But I'm putting you on the spot here. What do these superstars all have in common? Well, if you can't tell, they all have a coach. Everybody needs a coach. I don't care if you're Tiger Woods, LeBron James, or Michael Phelps. You need to be thinking about how you can up your game on a daily and weekly, monthly, quarterly basis. So you've got to be working with internal or external people. Find a mentor. Get your manager to do it. And managers, I'm calling you out here. I don't care if you run an account-based model. You need to be running coaching opportunities with your people. And I'm throwing out kind of a quick sample here just for you to start to noodle on a little bit. This would be a sample monthly skill program that I've often recommended. Let me kind of take you through it. One of my good friends, Steve Frame, big believer, great coach, has helped develop some of these concepts. But again, get a cadence in place. Let's start thinking about metrics. So metrics, let's say, define your KPIs. Talk about where that person is with each of his deals and how they've been trending on some of their numbers. Week 2, let's grab the group together and let's go through a practical case study. Go through an account review that's been submitted. Have someone go through an actual approach strategy and have the team diagnose or kind of break that down together. Week 3, this is a great rotation to throw in just natural best practices or industry information. Talk about the science of selling. Talk about the latest research study by InsideSales.com or Microsoft, or some of these great teams and companies that's producing content. The role play, actually invite somebody within a group to go through some sort of a pitch or a value assessment or overcoming objections, and see if you can't bring the team's level up. And then lastly, you can potentially grab some of your team leads together and do more of a strategy session. So I am a believer in systematizing things, and I think if we're going to get better, we got to follow what great people do, and I think great people have a coach. Okay, so as we come kind of to the little bit of a close here, wanted to summarize again, definitely want to thank our sponsor, Microsoft and Armanino. 5 secrets to closing 7-figure deals. That account-based model is proving super invaluable. How do you do that the best way? Don't do it in silos. Think about the definition. Get the group together. Make it personalization, not automation. Number 2, solidify your sales stack. Again, little surprising. Sales intelligence, sales presentation, data services, CRM, top 4 that the big dogs are saying they're using in order to close bigger deals. Clean your house here. Get a pipeline structure, sales stages, get a cadence strategy. Make sure that you're thinking strategically about working with your reps to manage your pipeline, and get serious about a data-driven forecast so that we can watch over these deals in a more structured manner. And then last but not least, this one I had to throw in there. I'm running through some of these interviews as I talk to these sales leaders, and I think a lot of more people are doing this than you think. A lot of people said to me, Gabe, one of my secrets is the way in which I coach my team. And I think you need to be thinking about a strategy to do that as effective as possible. So to kind of bring it to a close here, so excited to be working with Microsoft and the partnership that we have there. We bring this content to you because of the partnership and the sponsorship we have with them. So I'd like to do a shout out to them and say, if you'd like to learn more about the Microsoft Dynamics CRM, put your name down there, say yes, we'll capture that and have reach out to you. They're doing some great things. Oh man, that news around Microsoft and LinkedIn, their partnership with us, they're making huge inroads into the sales acceleration space, and I think they've got some fun things coming down the pipe. So we'll go ahead and keep that in play, and then we're going to open it up to the Q&A questions here. Let me see if I can pull a few of these. Let's see. Oh, my goodness, I got really far behind on some of these. Okay. Let's see. So talking about, let's go with John here. John's question around thinking about how you optimize your sales stages. Should I go with more transactional or should I go with more transformational? Do you have any samples? So good question. How do you get tactical about getting optimal sales stages in place? We touched on it a little bit. I think more transactional. So think, demo, presentation, negotiate, close if you're in that high velocity model. If you're not in a high velocity model, you're going to want to be thinking kind of the example I put on the slides, which is more, planning. You want to identify executive sponsors. You want to keep bigger buckets that are a little bit more strategic. But I think you got to figure out which category do you fall in, that transactional or relationship side of things. Let's see, Justin here. If you are the manager, how do you recommend going about getting coaching? Oh, so not just for the reps, but how do you get more coaching yourselves? I would say the same strategy I mentioned kind of to you for your own people, your manager should be employing for you and potentially your peers. So if you've got an SVP of sales and he's got 3 or 4 managers, what is the cadence? What is the coaching cadence that you're doing as a group? Do you have a weekly strategy in place where you come together and learn from each other? I would say oftentimes people don't. Great managers do naturally one-on-ones. Most great managers do not do team sessions very well, and that's the reason I think you often need kind of that cadence to be able to really nail that down in an effective manner. We've got Mark saying, Gabe, what sales-related books am I reading these days? Well, let me just pull up my Audible. I kind of bounce around. I'm actually doing a marketing course on account-based marketing that I have found really interesting, although not a book. Big believer in The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Love that model, and I'm trying to get with Amanda Holmes. She's fantastic. I've also got the Sales Acceleration Formula by Mark Roberge. I think that's going to be an interesting one. Just reread Behind the Cloud with Mark Benioff. The Challenger Sales. Man, I love the Lean Startup. I'm halfway through a book called Essentialism. I have a real problem, Mark. I love to do anything and everything, so I'm trying to get a little more focused. Those would be some of the books I'm literally looking at The Goal's a great one. I'm actually looking at my Audible, so that's a fun one. What else do we have here? My business is not enterprise-based, but is more marketing and advertising-based. How does this model fit into this type of sales structure? Wes, I need to see a little more. I need to hear probably a little more about what your sales team looks like. You can ping me after on LinkedIn or Twitter. But depending on the sales structure that you have, the type of customers you're going after, the ACV that you have in the sales cycle, you need to think a little differently about the way you want to go to market. Because, this conversation has been more thinking about that more strategic model, the account-based model, and it's not for everybody, you guys. It's definitely something that you can potentially have both models, or something you need to be pretty strategically about implementing. Couple more here. I don't know if I'm going to be able to answer all of these. Let's see. Oh, Justin, you did read Essentialism. Appreciate it. I'll make sure I do that. Let's see. We've got Steve here. What other technologies do you feel like are most effective in optimizing a sales process? So, we hit a little bit on technologies. As you look in this space, some of the things I thought would come up more are pipeline management and forecasting technologies. If you're serious about moving upstream, I believe you've got to nail that part of the process. So I would encourage you to consider some of the great technologies around opportunity scoring and predictive forecasting. What else do we have here? I've missed about 30. Guys, I'll try to make sure that I answer some of these good questions. Yes, the slides will be available. We'll send you a link. I've got Mary saying she'd love to see that coaching model. Again, as I close here, please do grab me on LinkedIn. I will be personally offended if you don't grab me on LinkedIn or add me on Twitter. Again, join our Sales Acceleration podcast, and certainly appreciate the time. Any last questions you have, feel free to shoot them in there, and I'll make sure to reply a little bit later. So have a great day, and really appreciate you joining. Take care.